I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, shifting gears. The Biden administration places new tariffs on China, what the president and former president are saying. Controlled substance. A state in the southern U.S. takes aim at abortion pills. Closing mass. A look at the efforts to save a historic church in Chicago set to close on Sunday. Plus, life and death. We remember the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Matthias. Our top story tonight, President Joe Biden slaps new tariffs on China to the tune of $18 billion. The administration says Beijing is engaging in unfair trade practices and flooding global markets with artificially low-priced exports. Former President Donald Trump also reacted to the tariff news. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, impacted by the new tariffs are, here's a short list, Chinese electric vehicles, advanced batteries, solar cells, steel, aluminum, and medical equipment. Now tonight, China obviously not too happy about the new tariffs, accusing the U.S. of bullying. Today at the White House, President Joe Biden laid out his new economic plan. His opponent for the Oval Office fired back.
Blasting China for dumping excess products onto the market at unfairly low prices, President Joe Biden says he wants to make sure American workers can compete and win.
That's why today I'm announcing new tariffs in key sectors of the economy that are going to ensure that our workers are not held back by unfair trade practices.
And as President Biden battles for re-election,
my predecessor promised to increase American exports and boost manufacturing, but he did neither. He failed.
Arriving in court again, former President Donald Trump blasted President Biden's tariff move.
He wants to put a big tariff on China, which is a suggestion that I said, where have you been for 3.5 years? They should have done it a long time ago.
The former president also saying China is eating America's lunch right now.
Mr. President, Trump said today China is eating our lunch. What do you say in response? He said China is eating our lunch. That's what Trump said today.
We've been feeding it a long time.
There are currently very few EVs from China in the U.S., but officials worry low-priced models made possible by Chinese government subsidies could soon start flooding the U.S. market for as little as $12,000. And on the new tariffs, the White House saying a 100% tariff rate on EVs will protect American manufacturers from China's unfair trade practices. The United States Trade Representative later addressed reporters in the White House press briefing room.
This is not about escalation. This is about the consequences of decades of economic policy and the need for the United States to defend our rights.
Now, the new tariffs, at least initially, are largely symbolic, since they will apply to only about $18 billion in imports, as initially explained. Now, administration officials have stressed the decision on the tariffs was made independently of November's presidential election, but one administration official did say the tariffs would help workers in the battleground states of Pennsylvania and Michigan. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, thank you, Owen. The United States assures Ukraine that more American aid is on the way to help defend against Russia's invasion. Secretary of State Antony Blinken offered support today during an unannounced trip to Kyiv.
I have come to Ukraine with a message. You are not alone. The United States has been by your side from day one. We are with you today, and we will stay by your side.
Blinken says the American military aid on its way to Ukraine will make a real difference on the battlefield. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also appeals to the U.S. to provide more air defense systems. Blinken told Zelensky, "We know this is a challenging time." And while U.S. military aid is slowly arriving, the delay has allowed Russian troops to make territorial gains in the Kharkiv region. Police and rescuers evacuated civilians again today. Ukrainian authorities say more than 7,500 people have been moved out of the area as troops battle to keep Russian forces at bay on the northern outskirts. And now to one of Russia's other neighbors, Georgia, where lawmakers there have approved a foreign influence bill that sparked weeks of protest. After the vote, protesters clashed with police. The bill requires media and non-governmental organizations and other nonprofits to register as pursuing the interests of a foreign power if they receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad. Critics denounced the bill as the Russian law because Moscow uses similar legislation to crack down on media or activists critical of the Kremlin. The Georgian president has vowed to veto the bill. Well, negotiations for a ceasefire in Gaza are at almost a stalemate. That is according to Qatar's prime minister, adding the talks were set back by Israel's military offensive in Rafah. Palestinian officials say Israeli strikes in central Gaza killed dozens of people overnight and into Tuesday. This was a scene in Nuseirat. Witnesses reported an Israeli bomb destroyed a three-story house where rescuers spent hours digging through the rubble. The Israeli military confirmed it also hit a nearby school building. House Speaker Mike Johnson was at the Manhattan courthouse today, appearing as former President Trump sits for another day of his hush money trial. Johnson is the latest and most prominent Republican lawmaker to attend the proceedings. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric.
Yes, good evening, Tracy. Yes, a parade of Republican lawmakers have been seen in the courtroom in recent days, supporting the former president and even campaigning for him. The trial has kept Trump largely off the campaign trail as he vies for yet another term in the White House. Now, before the trial this morning, House Speaker Mike Johnson was out there, and he called the case a perversion of justice.
I called President Trump and told him I wanted to be here myself to call out what is a travesty of justice, and I think everybody around the country can see that. President Trump is a friend, and I wanted to be here to support him.
There's never been anything like this in the history of our country. It's a scam. It's election interference at a level that's never taken place before.
Other Republicans have also been speaking out about the trial, which they call a threat to democracy.
We cannot have a country where you get to prosecute your political opponents instead of persuading voters. Joe Biden's entire strategy is to try to distract from inflation at home and war overseas with this sham trial.
And we got a courtroom that's the most depressing thing I've ever been in. Mental anguish is trying to be pushed on the Republican candidate for the President of the United States this year. That's all this is.
Others add the trial is a waste of taxpayer money.
That the FEC has said that there is no crime, that the DOJ has said there is no crime. And so it's truly outrageous that this is how District Attorney Alvin Bragg is choosing to use New Yorkers' tax dollars.
But Democrats say it's about time. Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib released a statement saying in part, quote, "The law has finally caught up with Donald Trump and his corrupt and reckless behavior. No one is above the law, no matter how rich or powerful they are." Others see the trial as a test of the former president's influence on the November election.
2024 is really going to be a decisive election in this country. In my view, it's going to be a rematch between President Biden and President Trump, and the American people really are going to get to weigh in on whether we count our votes, whether it's okay if you lose an election to try to subvert the process.
The judge is requiring the former president to be in court for 4 weekly court sessions, forcing his campaign team to schedule many of his in-person appearances on weekends, campaign virtually, or use Republican surrogates to get his message out. Court watchers predict the trial will wrap up, that is, in midsummer. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
From outside the courthouse to inside the courtroom, the key witness in Donald Trump's hush money case faced tough questions from the defense team. The credibility of Michael Cohen was immediately attacked. The lead defense lawyer pressed Trump's former fixer about his social media posts, his attempts to make money off his association with Trump, and his desire to see the former president behind bars. Cohen's testimony has linked Trump to all aspects of a hush money scheme that prosecutors say was aimed at stifling stories that threatened his 2016 campaign. All right, let's discuss this with legal expert and criminal attorney Tama Cudman. Tama, good to see you. So how important is Cohen's testimony, and how do you think he's doing?
So it's crucial testimony. The general appraisal of his performance so far is that he's done a lot better than most people anticipated. His demeanor was calm. He answered the questions directly. He has not gotten frazzled. My understanding is that generally his appearance was credible and that he's done a very good job. Importantly, the prosecutor set up his testimony by bringing in other witnesses first so that his testimony really became corroborative. And we all know that there are a lot of credibility issues with respect to Mr. Cohen. And so that was an important strategy by the prosecution.
Yeah, I want to jump off of that about his credibility issues. I mean, he did admit to lying under oath. So, how can the prosecution really convince a jury that he's a credible witness?
Well, and the classic question there is, are you a liar? And if he answers yes, then he's confirmed that he's a liar. And if he answers no, we already know that he's lied. And so there's no good answer for that. So the real problem here, though, for Mr. Trump is he was his liar. And he was firmly a member of Donald Trump's camp, his world. He was his fixer. And so to the extent that this man lacks credibility, the defense has to be careful here because, again, he was Mr. Trump's liar.
Yeah, and the former president's lawyer is cross-examining Cohen, as you know. What kind of defense strategy is he using here?
In terms of the cross-examination, what we're going to see first is an attack on the credibility. What's the motive, right? Why is he lying? He's a liar. And why is he lying? He hates him. So he's been taking him through all of the posts that he put on Twitter, in social media, in live news appearances. Mr. Cohen has made it very clear that he now hates the former president. He's made no bones about that. And so right now, the apparent strategy is to display that motive. He hates him and he wants to see him behind bars, right? And then that calls into question everything that he's testified about. So I would expect that once they get off of those general credibility attacks and motive attacks, we're going to start seeing the defense get into the nitty-gritty details of his testimony.
We're almost out of time, Tama, but if you were trying this case, what would you do? I mean, would you do anything differently?
There's quite a bit that I would do differently, and I don't think we have enough time to go into it. But I think the big question is going to be whether or not the defense is going to have Mr. Trump testify, which I would not do. So I don't know if we have the time to get into what I would have done differently thus far, but certainly I would be urging the president not to testify at this point. And I just don't know what the plan is for the defense.
Well, Tama, great to be with you. Always great to get your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I appreciate it.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including a new category. Lawmakers in Louisiana move to reclassify abortion drugs. Welcome back. Lawmakers in Louisiana are attempting to reclassify 2 abortion drugs as dangerous substances. The proposed amendment would put misoprostol and mifepristone in the same category as narcotics and depressants. The move would also make it a felony to be found with the drugs without a valid prescription. It was added to a Senate bill that would make it a crime to give abortion drugs to someone without their consent. Lawmakers have until June 3rd to give the legislation final approval. A new survey says that each month 8,000 women receive abortion drugs despite their state's bans or restrictions. The findings are from a pro-abortion business. It says the pills are available through the mail despite any restrictions where they're being sent. Pro-lifers say the laws where the abortion takes place should apply and not laws where the medical provider is located. The policy has yet to be tested in court. Well, here in the nation's capital, a pro-lifer was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison for violating the FACE Act. This comes after Lauren Handy was part of a rescue at a local abortion business. Her attorneys say they will appeal the conviction. Let's bring in Martin Cannon, a lawyer from the Thomas More Society who represented Lauren Handy. Martin, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. First off, how is Lauren doing? And can you tell us why you say this conviction is, quote, a miscarriage of justice?
Well, your first question, how's she doing? She's amazing. She was all smiles and joking around and laughing with me when I visited her after the hearing today. We went down into the visiting room in the jail at the courthouse. She's just remarkable, and she's very pleased with the sentence. You know, she was expecting 78 months, and she got 57 months instead. she's already got 9 of those months served, so she's really looking at 4 years, and there are ways that she'll get that pared down, and she thinks she'll be out in about 2. And but having said that, 2 years and 9 months plus 3 years of supervised release is a very long sentence for an event like this. We gave the court about half a dozen cases with far more egregious conduct under the same statute. Most of the sentences were 1 to 2 years. So that's a miscarriage, in my opinion. The conviction itself is a miscarriage because these people were trying to save babies. They don't like abortion, and they are pro-life activists. But in this particular case, they were trying to save babies from being born alive and then just set aside on the counter to die. Sometimes a process takes up to 4.5 hours. A living child neglected after being born alive until it dies hours later. So, and the judge and even the U.S. Attorney and the Department of Justice agreed with me that if that's going on, the FACE Act doesn't even prevent it, and she could use all the things at her disposal that any of us would have to defend another person who's being murdered. The problem is they wouldn't let us put on the court would not let us put on the evidence to flesh out that concern.
It's very concerning and all disturbing, too. Martin, I understand that several other pro-lifers will be sentenced in D.C. this week. Can you tell us more about that? What's going on there?
Well, there were 9 of them, and the judge said properly gave each person a separate hearing for his or her sentence. Lauren's was the first. There were, I think, 2 more today, and then there will be maybe 3 or 4 tomorrow. And a couple of them were postponed until about a week from now because of health issues and stuff like that. But there are a total of 9 defendants, and each of them is going to have a separate sentencing hearing. Each hearing will take between 1 and 2 hours, and they're just kind of lined up and just one after another.
Mark, before I let you go, for our viewers, what else do you want them to know about these cases? What's the big takeaway from here?
I would say the takeaway is this is really what we get when Roe versus Wade blew this huge hole in our national fabric and created a void. Abortion was nothing like what it is today. It wasn't the industry that it has become. But wickedness will fill any vacuum you give it. And 50 years later, we've got 60 million American children that we've killed at our own hands. And Lauren and her group see that truth, and we need to see it with them.
Absolutely. Martin, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, closing its doors. Learn more about efforts to save a church that is more than a century old. Plus, we take a look back at the assassination attempt of Pope St. John Paul II 43 years later. A church in Chicago that opened more than 100 years ago is set to close for good this Sunday, right after the 1 p.m. Mass. But there is a community effort to try and save Our Lady of Lourdes on the city's north side. One group hopes to have it designated as a historic landmark. The church was built back in 1916. Parishioners say that it draws pilgrims from all over the country to see the replica of the Grotto of Lourdes in France. The Archdiocese says the church is no longer needed. That's because of a merger with nearby St. Mary's of the Lake. The pastor of both parishes said in a statement, quote, "This is a very difficult moment in the life of our parish. We understand that this decision will cause hurt, sadness, anger, and confusion." For more, let's bring in Katerina Garcia, president of the nonprofit Our Lady of Lourdes Church Preservation Society. Katerina, great to be with you today. So tell us a little bit more about Our Lady of Lourdes and why you say it qualifies as a historic landmark and it should be preserved.
Thank you, Tracy, for having me here. You brought tears to my eyes, sorry, because it's going to close soon. Anyway, Our Lady of Lourdes has such a historical event that happened in 1929. It was literally across the street on the east side of Ashland Avenue. And Daniel Burnham, who is a prominent architect, an urban developer in Chicago wanted to widen the streets in Chicago. So in order for them to widen Ashland Avenue, they had to move the church literally across the street. They had 150 men and horses, and they put the 10,000-ton church on top of like 400 rails and 3,000 rollers, and literally moved it across the street, inching it. And then they rotated it 90 degrees once it was across the street. And then they cut the church in half and added a 30-foot insert. So then they were able to increase the capacity from like 800 people to 1,200 people. And that back then, 1929, that's such a very, like, I can't even think of the word. It's just a engineering feat.
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible. And I know this means so much to you. I mean, I can hear it in your voice and almost brought you to tears there. The Archdiocese, I mean, I know it means a lot to a lot of people too. The Archdiocese says, though, that Mass attendance has really steadily dropped and has limited help from priests. And it was really necessary to consolidate Mass times and eventually close and merge with another nearby church. How would you respond to that? What would you say?
Well, personally, I feel like, and I represent the parishioners, that we disagree with that statement, because before the merge, Our Lady of Lourdes Church had the highest attendance compared to St. Mary of the Lake and St. Andrew. So we totally disagree with that. They decreased the masses that we had. So of course that's going to decrease attendance, and they increased the masses at St. Mary of the Lake. So we totally disagree with that.
We're almost out of time. There's so many more questions I have for you, but I really want to know this. I mean, how are your efforts going right now? And what do you want folks to know? I mean, this is just a beautiful church.
Yes. Well, I'm very excited. I'm actually going to City Hall this Thursday, and I'm going to pitch landmarking to the committee. So I'm excited about that. And then at the end of the month, I'm meeting with the Archdiocese of Chicago, the Alderman's office, and a representative from Father Durantes of St. Mary of the Lake. And I'm going to discuss purchasing the church from them.
Wow. Well, keep us posted, Katerina. We're going to be watching you and see what happens and praying as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Finally, tonight, a delegation of Polish faithful commemorated the 43rd anniversary of the attempted assassination of St. John Paul II at the Vatican. EWTN Polska journalist Magdalena Walenska-Reedy has more.
A bouquet of red and white flowers in St. Peter's Square, mirroring the colors of the Polish flag. Every year, crowds gather to remember the day that a saint was shot. The date was May 13th, 1981, and the victim was Pope John Paul II.
This is exactly where the shots were fired 43 years ago. The Pope was finishing his second ride around the square when suddenly, among cheering crowds of believers, all the bets took flight and the Pope fell limply into the Papamobile.
News cameras were rolling as the shots rang out. The pictures flashed around the world. The faithful held their breath.
It was terrifying because no one knew what actually happened. Just a few moments before I approached at the middle of St. Peter's Square, people were talking about the assassination attempt. The news had already spread in some way. I saw crowds of people despairing, crying. Others were praying on their knees.
Everyone who was there that day has their own memory of the horrifying aftermath. Luciano Firmani worked in the Vatican for 42 years, serving under 5 popes. He was a member of the Vatican technical staff and lift operator in the Apostolic Palace.
Shots rang out. I thought they were the sounds of caps, and just a moment later, a Pope-mobile flashed in front of me. The Pope was bleeding heavily. I was totally devastated. Suddenly, I noticed a nun in front of me who was struggling with someone. It was him, the killer. She tried to block him.
Another long-time Vatican employee, Demetrio Fortunati, watched as the Papamobile rendezvoused with an ambulance behind Vatican walls.
Pensa che gli ho dato perfino una mano.
I was gazing as the bleeding Pope was being laid on the ground after being removed from the Popemobile, and then they were carrying him to the ambulance on a stretcher. Suddenly I noticed that the Pope, amidst all the great confusion, was slipping from the stretcher. I jumped over the railing at the printing house in an instant and supported him.
Saint John Paul II survived, but it was the beginning of long years of suffering, as the assassination attempt left permanent damage to his health. The events of the day cast an evil shadow over the Vatican, even as Catholics everywhere came together to pray for a rewounded pontiff. Most of all his fellow Poles, who even 43 years later still gather in St. Peter's Square. From the Vatican for EWTN News Nightly, Magdalena Molińska-Riewi.
Never forget that, indeed. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol, and we leave you tonight with bagpipers on Capitol Hill as part of Police Week festivities right here in the nation's capital. Good night, and God bless.